Biden agency to consult with left-wing groups on boosting DEI in Ethiopia. From the Washington Examiner, the Biden administration is soliciting responses on how it can boost left-leaning diversity, equity, inclusion and accessibility practices at an agency in the landlocked African country of Ethiopia. Documents show. Championing DEI has been a foremost concern of the federal government since President Joe Biden took office, with the president on his first day signing an executive order directing agencies to conduct equity assessments due to the alleged effects of systemic racism. Now, the United States Agency for International Development's mission in Ethiopia is planning on consulting with non-profit groups, public schools, think tanks, and other parties to learn more ways it can advance DEI within its existing activities and structures, according to documents reviewed by the Washington Examiner. The Biden administration has been relentless in politicizing every agency of the federal government and injecting them into the culture wars, Senator Ted Cruz, Republican Texas, said. Like every other foreign policy agency in the federal government, USAID should be doing everything possible to counter aggression and hostility from the Chinese Communist Party against our allies. Instead, they're focusing on fringe progressive ideology. The request for information documents further underscore how USAID, an agency that handles foreign aid and disclosed a $49.59 billion budget in 2023, has prioritized DEI initiatives. USAID in March 2022 announced the launch of a DEI office that will report to Samantha Power, the agency's administrator, who served under President Barack Obama as the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. USAID's Ethiopia mission is based in the country's capital of Addis Ababa and works on a variety of issues, including nutrition, economic growth and trade, HIV and AIDS prevention, and education. According to its website, which also notes that the office focuses on fighting climate change and furthering gender equality and women's empowerment. The U.S. was the main financial supporter of Ethiopia in 2022, giving the country $1.8 billion in humanitarian aid, though in June 2023 suspended all food aid to Ethiopia upon learning of an apparently widespread and coordinated theft campaign of emergency rations that the country's government oversaw. The New York Times reported. In the RFI documents, USAID described how it is reviewing its activities to see how the Ethiopia office can adjust its diversity practices. The mission said it aims to proactively address internal systems that potentially inhibit inclusive diversity efforts and access throughout the USAID employee life cycle, and establish and enhance training and capacity-building opportunities for all staff, including managers and supervisors, on diversity fundamentals, bias, and principles of inclusion. According to records, USAID strives to ensure that human rights principles are respected around the world and advocates for the protection of the most vulnerable populations in crises, including refugees, conflict victims, internally displaced and stateless persons, and individuals from marginalized racial, ethnic, indigenous, and religious communities, persons with disabilities, LGBTQI+ individuals, women, and older persons, a USAID spokesperson told the Washington Examiner. USAID is asking parties to provide insight as to whether the agency has effectively engaged with marginalized groups, which includes lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, LGBTQI+, populations, and children in adversity. The agency is also asking parties to describe any structural barriers to reaching these groups. Moreover, USAID wants to know whether parties have advice as to how the agency can improve the recruitment, hiring, and retention of a diverse workforce, while asking whether people have expertise in inclusive development, an equitable development approach built on the understanding that every individual and community, of all diverse identities and experiences, is instrumental in the transformation of their own societies, according to the federal government. The RFI was signed by Adrienne Shade, a USAID Ethiopia Contracting and Agreement Officer. Parties have until August 24 to respond. Diversity and equity have become loaded terms in recent years, Michael Chamberlain, director of the ethics watchdog group Protect the Public's Trust, told the Washington Examiner. While the principles may sound benign, too often in practice their effects can be far different. When they are used to base hiring, personnel, or funding decisions upon race or other immutable characteristics. There is definitely the danger of running afoul of anti-discrimination laws, something the U.S. Supreme Court recently reiterated in the context of college admissions. Revelations of the DEI consulting initiative come as congressional Republicans raise concerns over what they say are woke USAID spending habits that undercut the agency's functionality. Senator Bill Hagerty, Republican Tennessee, pressed power in an April hearing over USAID's use of taxpayer funds to purportedly stave off climate change rather than prioritizing poverty alleviation. USAID notably detailed in a recent strategy report its worldwide plans to mobilize climate activists, who the agency said suffer from a broad range of climate-related mental health conditions. USAID needs to assure the American public that these programs do not creep into prohibited areas, Chamberlain added.
There is enough food on Earth to feed everyone.
That truth is or was in the 20th century that while were beginning to develop endangered species movements, is going to take some time. We have to ask ourselves, what now? What do we do going forward as a country and as citizens? I feel like we are lacking guidance, and this was the pulley system. This was what we were able to muster for Sergio. The good news, for what it's worth, is after Sergio and 21 others were killed that day in the attack on the UN, the military created a search and rescue unit, then had the cutting equipment, the shoring wood, the cranes, the things that you would have needed to do the rescue, but it was too late for Sergio. I want to wrap up, but I want to close with what I take to be the 4 lessons from Sergio's life on this question of how do we prevent evil from prevailing, which is how I would have framed the question. Here's this guy who got a 34-year head start thinking about the kinds of questions we as a country are grappling with.
Gemeinsame Erinnerungen formen.
When I am president of the United States, gays and lesbians will have somebody who will fight for equal rights for them because they are our brothers and they are our sisters. Now, normally I'd be worried about losing such an extraordinary person up at the United Nations and be trying to figure out how are we ever going to replace her. But fortunately, I'm confident we've got an experienced, effective, and energetic UN ambassador in waiting in Samantha Power. Samantha first came to work for me in 2005, shortly after I became a United States Senator. As one of our country's leading journalists, I think she won the Pulitzer Prize at the age of 15 or 16. One of our foremost thinkers on foreign policy. She showed us that the international community has a moral responsibility and a profound interest in resolving conflicts and defending human dignity. As a senior member of my national security team, she's been a relentless advocate for American interests and values, building partnerships on behalf of democracy and human rights, fighting the scourge of anti-Semitism and combating human trafficking. To those who care deeply about America's engagement and indispensable leadership in the world, you will find no stronger advocate for that cause than Samantha. And over the last 4 years, Samantha's worked hand in glove with Susan in her role because Samantha's been the lead White House staffer on issues related to the United Nations. And I'm fully confident she'll be ready on day one to lead our mission in New York while continuing to be an indispensable member of my national security team. She knows the UN's strengths, she knows its weaknesses, she knows that American interests are advanced when we can rally the world to our side, and she knows that we have to stand up for the things that we believe in. Coptic cross. This is from Ethiopia. So I've got a whole bunch of this stuff. But the reason I thought it was useful to show these, because I carry these around all the time, and I'm not that superstitious, so it's not like I think necessarily I have to have them on me at all times.
Just because I'm tired of Barack Obama and Mitt Romney.
That's why you're crying? Oh, it'll be over soon, Abby. Okay? The election will be over soon, okay?
Okay.
Oh.
Just because I'm tired of Barack Obama and Mitt Romney.
That's why you're crying? Oh, it'll be over soon, Abby. Okay? The election will be over soon, okay?
Okay.
Oh.
Just because I'm tired of Barack Obama and Mitt Romney.
That's why you're crying? Oh, it'll be over soon, Abby. Okay? The election will be over soon, okay?
Okay.
Oh.